Killers who pretended to help search for their victims. One killer helped search for a missing girl while her body was under his own house. Another hugged a mother while her daughter was already buried. And one brought a tracking dog to help find two girls he had already murdered. These killers didn't run from the search, they joined it. Darren Vickers, he practically moved into his victim's home. 8-year-old Jamie Lavis disappeared in Manchester on May 26, 1997, after spending hours around bus driver Darren Vickers. Then Darren made himself indispensable to Jamie's family. He told Jamie's parents he had been one of the last people to have ever seen their son. He joined searches, confronted them, and even appeared in television appeals so they wouldn't have to face the cameras. He reportedly monitored police radio traffic with a scanner, allowing him to follow developments and quickly appear when possible sightings came in. Then it went even further. Darren became so trusted that he effectively moved into the Lavis home, and Jamie's parents reportedly gave Darren their own bedroom and slept somewhere else. And while Jamie was already dead, investigators eventually established that Darren had SA'd and killed Jamie, whose remains were discovered months later in Reddish Vale. Police had already become suspicious of Darren, but after one early arrest, they lacked enough evidence to charge him. Jamie's family still believed Darren was helping them and reportedly welcomed him back after his release. Darren was finally convicted in 1999 and was sentenced to life with the minimum term of 25 years. He didn't simply hide what he had done. He embedded himself inside the family, searching for the child he had killed. Henry, the victim, was under his own house. 13-year-old Melissa disappeared and a massive community search began. Among the people helping was Henry, a trusted neighbor and family acquaintance, described as a church deacon and Bible school instructor. There was only just one horrifying problem. Melissa's body was underneath Henry's house. For more than a week, volunteers searched roads surrounding areas while Henry participated alongside them. 11 days after Melissa disappeared, police searched his property and found her buried beneath the dirt floor of the basement. His house was almost directly across from the local police station. While everyone searched further and further away, Henry repeatedly returned to the building where Melissa had been hidden the entire time. Henry was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder. Quetavia Givens, the two juice boxes. 4-year-old Darnell Gray disappeared from Jefferson City, Missouri in October of 2018. While in the care of Quetavia Givens, Quetavia told police Darnell had vanished before 7 a.m. But her description was bizarrely specific. She said Darnell had disappeared with a backpack, coat, hat, gloves, cookies, and exactly 2 juice boxes. Then Quetavia joined the search. Volunteers remembered her walking neighborhoods and shouting Darnell's name, Darnell, Darnell, but some immediately found the juice box detail strange. One researcher later questioned why someone panicking over a missing 4-year-old would stop and count juice boxes. Darnell hadn't walked away with snacks. His body was discovered 5 days later. Investigators said he had suffered blunt force trauma and been smothered, and Quetavia later acknowledged striking Darnell and hiding his body. In May of 2026, earlier this year, she was sentenced to life plus 15 years after pleading guilty to second-degree murder, child abuse, and abandonment of a corpse. The woman showing Darnell's name beside volunteers already knew exactly why he wasn't answering. Charles Melquist. He drove her grandmother around in the murdered car. 15-year-old Bonnie Lee Scott disappeared from Addison, Illinois in September of 1958. Charles Leroy Melquist had been Bonnie for roughly a year and cultivated what was described as an older big brother relationship with her. After Bonnie vanished, Charles appeared to help. For roughly a week, he drove Bonnie's grandmother through surrounding streets in his white 1957 convertible, searching for her. Then Charles confessed. He told authorities he had killed Bonnie inside that same car and said some of Bonnie's clothing had been hidden underneath the front seat. That means Bonnie's grandmother may have been sitting inside a vehicle containing evidence connected to her grandmother's death, while Charles drove around pretending they might find her alive. Bonnie's decomposed body was eventually discovered in a forest preserve. She had been decapitated. Charles said he had suffocated Bonnie in his car, disposed of the body later, and returned to mutilate her remains. The search wasn't simply fake concern. Charles personally drove Bonnie's grandmother around in the vehicle he said he used to kill her. Wayne O'Donoghue. He comforted Robert's mother. 11-year-old Robert Holohan disappeared near Middleton County, Cork on January 4, 2005. Wayne O'Donoghue lived nearby and knew Robert. Hours after Robert disappeared, his mother, Magella Holohan, said Wayne stood beside her and told her not to worry. Don't worry about anything. Wayne also joined the search, which eventually grew to around 1,200 volunteers. This was a massive search. But Wayne already knew Robert wasn't going to come home. Robert's body has been concealed underground near Inch Strand and was found on January 12. Wayne admitted causing Robert's death and hiding his body, but he denied intentionally killing him. Prosecutors charged him with murder, while Wayne maintained the death followed an altercation. A jury ultimately convicted him of manslaughter rather than murder, and he received a 4-year prison sentence. Something to me tells me that is not enough time. The sentence caused enormous controversy, but the most disturbing detail came before the trial. Wayne reassured Robert's mother and stood among people searching for Robert while already knowing where his body had been left. Stanley Dishon. The search reaction that looked different years later. Get this, 17-year-old Jessica Dishon vanished from Shepherdsville, Kentucky in September of 1999, and her body was found more than 2 weeks later. The case remained unsolved for years until investigators eventually turned towards Jessica's uncle, Stanley Dishon. Jessica's father later remembered something strange from the original searches. While relatives were searching near an area connected to where Jessica would eventually be found, Stanley reportedly became physically ill. At the time, nobody knew what that meant. Years later, the family viewed the moment very differently. Investigators ultimately alleged Stanley strangled Jessica following an argument, but Stanley was never convicted of murder at the trial. In January of 2015, he entered an Alford plea to first-degree manslaughter, meaning he maintained his innocence while acknowledging prosecutors had enough evidence to potentially convict him. He received a 20-year sentence. The case took more than 15 years to reach that point, and one of the moments the family was left replaying came from the original search itself. Douglas Sidie. He put their twins on television. 27-year-old Alicia Sidie disappeared from Hatfield, Wisconsin in November of 2008 after an argument with her ex-husband, Douglas Sidie. Douglas told police Alicia had been drinking, became angry, and simply walked away carrying her purse. Then he acted like a cooperative ex-husband, just so desperate to find her. Douglas answered police questions, returned calls right away, searched the woods with volunteers, and appeared publicly with their 2-year-old twin boys, thanking people for searching for their mother. But Douglas already knew Alicia was dead. He eventually admitted shooting her from behind with a .22 caliber handgun. Is this real life right now? He was wearing rubber gloves. Douglas loaded Alicia's body into his truck and tried to hide her in the marsh. He's like, I'll put her here, no one will ever find her. When he decided she was too visible, he moved her again. He was like, yeah, this isn't gonna work. People might see her actually. So he moved her to another location. He moved her and dragged her into the dense woods. He disposed of Alicia's phone and the gun into a creek. More than a week after Alicia disappeared, Douglas confessed and directed authorities towards her remains. He pleaded guilty to first-degree intentional homicide and received life in prison with parole eligible after 35 years, while his toddler appeared publicly waiting for their mother to come home. Such a sad story. Douglas already knew exactly where she was. William Snyder. He invented a $60,000 kidnapping. 34-year-old Kelly Jo Snyder disappeared from Monroe, Pennsylvania on Easter Sunday in 2015. Her husband William Snyder didn't just claim Kelly was missing. He invented kidnapping. He's planned this one out. William joined friends and relatives searching for Kelly, appeared on television asking for her return, and produced what appeared to be a $60,000 ransom demand. It suggested that Kelly had been abducted and might still be alive. But there's one thing, none of this was real. Authorities determined William had strangled Kelly during an argument inside of their home, concealed her body inside a sleeping bag in the basement, and later dumped her beside a stream. How are people capable of doing this? The ransom demand deliberately sent to everyone. It was sent to everyone towards a crime that had never happened. There was no kidnapper. There was no ransom. And Kelly wasn't being held somewhere waiting to be rescued. William pleaded guilty to third-degree murder, false reports, abuse of a corpse, and evidence tampering, and he received 20 to 42 years in prison. He didn't merely hide a murder, he manufactured hope. Russell Bishop. He brought a tracking dog. 9-year-old best friends Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway disappeared in Brighton, England on October 9th, 1986. The next day, roughly 200 police officers and residents searched Wild Park. 20-year-old Russell Bishop joined them, and Russell brought a terrier named Misty. He claimed Misty was an extremely valuable trained tracking dog, giving him an obvious reason to move through the search operation as someone supposedly helping police find the girls. But Russell didn't need a tracking dog, did he? He already knew where Nicola and Karen were. Russell had SA, which, because this video's on YouTube, I can't say it, and he strangled both girls and concealed their bodies inside a makeshift den in the park. When researchers discovered them, Russell rushed towards the scene with police and later claimed he had checked their necks for a pulse, potentially explaining why he had touched the bodies. Then come one of the most shocking developments in the entire story. You won't believe this one. Russell was tried in 1987 and was acquitted. 3 years later, he abducted SA and attempted to murder another 7-year-old girl. Decades later, changes to double jeopardy law and improved forensic testing reopened the murder case. DNA and fiber evidence connected Russell to the blue sweatshirt linked to Nicola and Karen. His acquittal wasn't acquitted anymore, it was overturned. And in December of 2018, more than 3 decades after the murder, Russell was finally convicted of killing both girls. He received life in prison with a minimum term of 36 years. Something tells me that is not enough time. The man walking through Wild Park with his supposedly, valuable tracking dog had known where the girls were from the beginning. It was all an act for him. Quake Lewellyn. He hugged Sidney's mother. 25-year-old nurse Sidney Sutherland disappeared on August 19, 2020, while jogging near Newport, Arkansas. The community immediately began searching, and farmer Quake Lewellyn joined them. Quake also entered a Facebook group being used to coordinate the search. Sidney's family knew him, and during the search, Quake hugged Sidney's mother, Maggie Sutherland. 2 days later, investigators found Sidney buried in a shallow grave in a rice field. Cell phone location evidence helped lead authorities towards Quake. Well, according to an affidavit, he admitted striking Sidney with his truck, placing her inside the vehicle. He also SA'd her and buried her. In October of 2021, Quake pleaded guilty to capital murder, and also he did other things, and received life without parole on both counts. At sentencing, Maggie confronted him with the detail that made his participation in the search almost impossible to comprehend. The same hands Quake used to comfort her had been involved in the killing of her daughter. He wasn't watching the search from somewhere far away, he was standing beside Sidney's family. The worst part wasn't just who killed them, it was realizing the person offering help, joining searches and comforting the family already knew that there was no one left to find. They didn't just fake innocence, they helped search for the people they killed.